Good evening, Internet, and welcome to a very special enter of Kenter at Your Own Risk with Kent, Kevin, and Chris, where we are going to be discussing iconic horror movie people, or horror icons. This is episode 52, and I would just like to say thank you guys for choosing to do this one on my birthday, Ba-dum-ching. It's actually been a really great day for me, and I know Kent and I have been talking about doing this one for well over a year at this point, so I'm glad we finally got to knock it out. How are you guys been?
Good. And happy birthday, Chris. I was pumped to see your birthday was today on Facebook, so as mine was last month, so that's cool.
We got to do Kent's on his birthday as well this year, or next
Mine
year.
falls on a Sunday, nonetheless.
Sweet. There we go.
Then it's
So
done. Well, when's your
the
birthday?
musical one will be on my birthday. How theatrical.
When's your birthday?
Awesome.
The 10th of December.
The 10th of December. Okay, so I got to get started on that now, but it'll be easy.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to be going over a list of, I believe, our top 25 iconic horror people, and we're going to be starting with Kevin kicking it off. We'll be back for another episode after this where we hit up our honorable mentions and go over what we've been watching, because this has definitely been a busy month for everybody. But
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Before we do this, I'm just kind of curious. I know, when you guys present, you'll probably give a little bit of rhyme and reason. But I don't know, just to tell the audience, the presenters for each one is the person who voted the highest for that particular icon. In cases of ties, for example, then we just kind of split the difference. But I was just genuinely curious from both of your perspectives, what was, your criteria? I don't know. How did you choose one over the other? It doesn't matter. If you had to choose Chucky over Leprechaun, what was the criteria? Was it movies, fandom, fun lines, just cultural significance?
You want to go ahead first, Kevin?
Yeah, I'll go. So for me was there's some undeniable ones. I don't want to give away too much of the list, but some people were undeniable. Chucky being kind of one of them, who I did rank higher just because I was born in 1981. I was 7, probably 8 when I saw the first Child's Play. I was, the third one came out in 90. So did they do 3 in a row, one after another? So anyways, those movies I remember growing up and it being a big part of my childhood. So those ones I would have to pick. Leatherface was another one. Even though Leatherface was a little bit before my time, but Halloween, masks, people, more so than I guess Chucky growing up, but people wore, my older cousins all had Leatherface masks or watched the movies. And even though I wasn't, I knew who he was without ever really seeing any of the movies, until much later on, and I see now why I didn't see Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I was 9 years old. But yeah, and merchandising. I worked in the malls in the early 2000s when Freddy vs. Jason came out. I worked at the mall, hung out at the mall, and so there was a big merchandising, that played a huge part, and Halloween masks and stuff like that, just things that kind of coincide with it. So yeah, and I guess in popular culture and along with merchandising, posters that you would see at Spencer's, which was the place I worked. So yeah.
Yeah, so as you kind of alluded to, I think my biggest decision were appearance and cultural significance. Because there are a lot of things that I would have said are iconic when we were younger that probably aren't anymore. I mean, I think a lot of our list, to people our age, in their 40s, people who followed horror, from the last, 35, 40 years, would be pretty consistent with what we've picked. But, I started thinking just a couple days ago, I'm like, I bet, you ask somebody who's 20 years old and the list would look completely different. I bet, say, for example, Slender Man would be much higher on, a Gen Z list than, not even showing up on ours.
Creepypasta shit could be there. Art the Clown would be significantly higher.
Yeah, things like that. And at the same point, you ask somebody who's 20, 30 years older than us, and I bet their list would be skewed in, the opposite direction. But, I think there are definitely examples that have stood the test of time. That was probably the hardest thing about making my version of our list that we did, was trying to figure out, who were iconic enough that, if I showed a non-horror movie fan, they'd be able to recognize who it was, if not by name or by actor, then at least, by the character. And the example of, like, spoiler, like a Ghostface, where there's been 7 or 8 people playing the same character kind of thing.
All of various heights.
Yes, I knew you were going to bring that up.
We'll get into it.
So, those were kind of my decisions. And, I like, at the same time, every once in a while I try to pick an outlier or two that I know probably isn't going to be making your lists, just like I would assume that you guys do too. Because, for all of us being horror aficionados, we all have slightly different tastes in what we appreciate.
Like Toxic Avenger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard the new one's really good.
So hopefully that'll bring... is it out yet? I didn't know that. I know it's coming out. Elijah Wood's company.
I think it came out. I know for a while, like, the reviews were going up, before the embargo was over, but the movie hadn't come out yet.
Yeah. So, but yeah, hopefully that'll bring them into popular culture more so than he is now. But or like Beetlejuice or something like that.
Yeah.
Remakes, I felt, just to tack on to what you guys just said, remakes really did make a huge impact on this list for me, because stuff that didn't get remade isn't going to be as well known. It just isn't to, like, a newer generation. So I did take that into consideration. No matter how bad a certain Jackie may be at a certain Roberts role, people of a certain age still know of him, and it helped because of the remake. It did. It helped keep the interest going for a younger generation. I think that helps.
Sorry to throw another one out, but, like, if we had done this, like, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, probably, like, Isaac from Children of the Corn and Pumpkinhead would have made my list, but...
Or Malachi?
Oh, well, someone from Children of the Corn would have made my list for sure. Malachi would have made my list.
Yeah. But,
Malachi makes my list. I feel he's... Although, Isaac's Revenge, or whatever, Part 6, is actually probably like the second or third best Children of the Corn.
But since, we haven't had a new one in years, and, a lot of the sequels were, as you alluded to, not quite of the same quality.
This year,
I was going to say, we just got Children of the Corn. Shit.
Same thing with, Jeepers Creepers. Like, when the first one came out, like, the Creeper was pretty fucking awesome, but, as each one consecutively got worse, and it went consecutively longer between them, I didn't feel, like, confident of throwing him into my list.
Yeah, and then, just to throw in one other example, it was like Hellraiser, with how they, I don't want to say remade, rebooted, whatever the hell they did, whatever that newest movie was, wasn't what we were used to. So, like, there's all different kinds of takes on this whole ideology. And, one thing's for sure, everybody's list would be 100% different if they were forced to do a top 25. If we could have 100 different people, I don't think anybody would have, like, even 22 of the same. Like, I feel like there's just so many different factors to this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, so are you guys ready to get into this now?
I am.
All right, Kevin, take us away with number 25. Kent, keep us on with the numbers because you're good at that.
Yep.
All right, Horror Icons, episode 52, number 25, Captain Spaulding, played by Sid Haig in the Firefly trilogy, directed by Rob Zombie, most recognizable in full clown gear and House of a Thousand Corpses. At 9 minutes and 15 seconds screen time, I think he is specifically more recognizable than the other two, Otis and Baby. Baby is probably a close second, but Otis actually has my favorite entrance. I know all about everything you want to know about, all about, or whatever. I fucked the line up, but yeah, with the fetus in the mason jar. But outside of that, the Captain Spaulding also like goes with like the marketing mall thing. Also, I've never seen on the DVD. Of course, that's the first time that I saw the movie. It had that whole intro where Captain Spaulding is doing like jokes or just his kind of shtick, where it goes to like a loop, but the loop is really long. So it like, it is very long and it is hilarious. And before I even saw the whole movie, the guy who played it for me made me watch the entire loop of it, and then I watched the movie. Um, I do think that Baby is her most iconic look is not even like specifically the blonde. I think it's the dinner show scene in makeup and wig. Their Grandpa Hugo, though, is my favorite of all the characters. My least favorite is Dr. Satan. The boogeyman is real, and you found him. Goddamn motherfucker got blood on my best clown suit. Sid Haig, which I did watch House of Thousand Corpses, and I did watch The Devil's Rejects, and there was more of him in the clown makeup than I remembered, because I remembered watching the movie for the first time and being like, oh, he doesn't have that persona. But then there was that great scene with him and stealing the car with the mom and the kid. Yeah. Official clown
business.
Dude, he's scary. Like, people were scared of clowns before that, but yeah. And man, what great. I know Rob Zombie gets a lot of shit for a lot of different shit, but man, he picked such a great cast for all of those movies. I think most of his movies actually, but especially House of Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects. I did not watch Three from Hell, unfortunately. I did want to, but he's really not in it that much. But I think the clown makeup, I don't know. I think 25 is probably a good spot on here. I'm glad that he made the list. So, yeah, Captain Spaulding, what do you guys think?
I think you could have just gone away with saying Devil's Rejects, quite frankly. That's actually how I originally had it labeled, because I can't pick any one over the other, because I feel like Otis actually carries the bulk of the work, him and Baby, but Spaulding's best known because when he's on, he's just doing fucking jokes. It's a weird situation. I just would just go with all three of them, and I think I have a shirt with Otis, I have an autographed picture of Spaulding, and I don't have anything of Baby yet. But yeah, whatever. I absolutely adore Spaulding. I love Sid Haig, obviously, or else I would not have invested in an autographed picture. So, I don't know. Didn't quite crack my top 25, which I kind of feel. I felt bad about leaving off about 50 different things, to be fair. So, I have no complaint.
I would disagree with Kent, but I'll get to that in a second. Basically, let's put it like this: you only basically have really two movies with Captain Spaulding as a character, and part of a third, because didn't he die? Did he die during or
Before
after?
Released.
Yeah, okay.
He died like a few, like, was it less than a week or less than a month after he was done filming?
Yeah, Rob Zombie wrote
close,
it 10 different times as his health was getting worse and worse. So That's
Yeah.
I'm really curious to what the film would have been, what he originally written with Captain Spaulding being more center.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think he gets top billing of the movies of the first two.
So, I mean, I would just like him to be a little more ubiquitous than basically 2 movies and a cameo. But if we're going to be picking somebody from this series of movies, I think Captain Spaulding is the most iconic one. Like you said, Kevin, like anything from House of a Thousand Corpses or Devil's Rejects, that wasn't a picture of all 3 of them was, the clown face. And while I think in the movies, Otis and Baby are probably stronger characters, like, I want to say, like, you show somebody a picture of Sherry Moon Zombie, apart from, like, the cover of the Lords of Salem movie, which character is she playing? Or monsters. Because they are all or most of the same character. And, long-haired Bill Moseley kind of looks similar to Otis. It's not until you get him start talking and listening to his, rants and screeds that he kind of stands out from some of the other characters that he's played in other movies over the years. So yes, I would say Captain Spaulding is the most iconic person out of the Firefly trilogy from Rob Zombie.
One-liners.
Good call, Kevin.
That's also part of the criteria.
Oh yeah, he's fucking funny. Like he's one of the best. Like, I mean, clowns don't bother me as much as they bother some other people. But yeah, I appreciate when a scary clown can be funny and not just kind of, scary.
All right. Yes. So
Diverse.
we'll move on. Number 24, which is also me, The Invisible Man,
Yes.
aka The Invisible One, from the 1933 film of the same name, directed by James Whale, one of the Universal Monster Six. The Invisible Man is Dr. Jack Griffin, played by Claude Rains, most famous for bandages and sunglasses with the whatever hat. I think the most iconic scene or image is him taking the bandage off, and you can see the lady innkeeper's face through the bandages. Uh, Basically, the Invisible One unravels, when he checks into an inn, tells no one to disturb him, makes a bunch of noise, trashes the place, and doesn't pay rent. The backstory of Dr. Jack Griffin, while researching a new drug, stumbles upon a potion that makes him invisible and also makes him insane. And then declaring a mission of murder and mayhem. I love the gags with the dancing clothes in this, the levitating books, the stuff flying through the air, choking out the constable. Classic. It's so much fun, and you can, I don't know. It's what I love about this movie is that like it has that like movie magic thing where you're kind of, even with all the technology we know nowadays, I'm not really sure how they did all of that back in 1933. So yes, The Invisible Man. I watched the 1933 one, and then I watched The Invisible Man Returns from 1940, which is played by a different, The Invisible Man is played by Vincent Price, who you don't see throughout almost the entire movie. But we get the Vincent Price voice, and we get that iconic look. So, The Invisible Man. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, especially with the newer one coming out and being as well regarded as it was, this is definitely one of the Universal Six who has kind of stayed within the public eye at least a little bit. I mean, between that, Hollow Man,
Memoirs?
what the hell was the one that yeah, Memoirs of the Invisible Man. I mean, he's been in as a character, in horror movies, in comedies. Shit, he was in what was the
League of
last one that
Extraordinary
Sean
Gentlemen?
Connery did? The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, played by Tony Curran in that, who's one of those reoccurring British character actors that I love. Yeah, it's a very good choice. And like you said, like some of the special effects that they did in the 1930s one were just amazing. Especially for the time, with no green screen able to be used in order to fix up shots and shit.
I I I'm just gonna be mean here. I hate this pick. I would not have put this in my top 75, maybe not my top 100, because everything we just described about 10 minutes ago about what makes an icon, I just don't see it with this one. And that's not a joke, but I mean, who has Invisible Man posters, shirts? Who goes dresses as the Invisible Man aside from John Cena because we can't see him? He doesn't have that marketability factor. He doesn't have the iconic lines. I just, I couldn't put him even in my top 100, and that is where I am at with so many of these that either I didn't pick or things that I wanted to pick, and I was just like, well, I can't ever see them on like a piece of merchandise, so I guess I didn't consider them icons of a top 25 list. So,
You, really? You don't think I mean, I get the Invisible Man is the one that you could forget, like if you look at it, or you're like, who's that one? Is that the Mummy because of the bandage thing? But
I mean, just think about it. Like,
But-
nobody goes dressed as that character, really. Like, it's something we know, but I don't know. For me, I just would not have included it. That's all. Rest assured, you have worse picks coming up, Kevin. You have worse picks.
I mean, the good thing, Ken, is it's okay for you to be wrong. So I mean,
yeah, yeah. No, he is definitely like probably the least recognizable of the six. I will say.
I mean, would you put him over like
but-
Phantom of the Opera, for example? And
Well, I've skipped that one. Yeah, I kind of forgot that.
I mean, but if we look at it in terms of cultural consciousness, no, I mean, there have been movies about the Invisible Man from the 1930s up until like 3 years ago, compared to like what 2.5 horror movies done by Rob Zombie that maybe gross, equal to the most recent Invisible Man movie in terms of like box office.
okay, but why isn't Phantom of the Opera anywhere on our top 25 when it has an ongoing musical that makes count?
Yeah, no, I got you. Unfortunately, the musical ended, I think, in 2017. But
Yeah,
well, that's because you didn't pick Phantom of the Opera, Kent. That's why he's not on our list.
I've never seen the damn
And I
Phantom of the
picked the
Opera.
Invisible Man
'Cause we didn't-
because
'cause we didn't think about
I own a shirt and I love the Invisible Man, and I didn't pick Hollow Man because that would be unfair to what we were
Do you
doing.
really have a
but-
shirt, Kevin?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, Hot Topic. I got it.
All right.
And I used to have a Universal Monster shirt, and he was included on that with the Bride of Frankenstein. But he was the one that you're like, I remember when I got it, I forget about him, but I knew you're right. You know who the Invisible Man is. He is forgettable, and
You know why he's on the
I wanna
list?
make sure
Because
he's not-
his name is in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Double feature. The song.
Oh yeah.
That
is true.
is the Invisible Man. Sorry, people.
That's in December, Chris. We'll get to that one. No, number 23, Creature from the Black Lagoon, from the 1954 film of the same name, directed by Jack Arnold. Piscine amphibious humanoid in the waters of the Amazon known as Gilman, whom is discovered by a group of scientists, or maybe it's the other way around. The Creature from the Black Lagoon takes the Universal monster movies and blends it with the popular or popularity of the sci-fi films of the 1950s. I think most iconic is the creature slash Gillman swimming underwater with the woman, where he's almost like touches the leg, uh, filmed with like this like great choreography and tension. Um, Fun fact: Rico Browning played the underwater Gillman in all three of the Universal pictures, and I think it was three different people played the I don't know the land Gillman um, in all three movies. So I watched Creature from the Black Lagoon and I watched Revenge of the Creature, which was 1955, and that one actually was a little bit better than the first. Um, and why the Creature from the Black Lagoon is on my list is in Monster Squad, he is, brought into culture of my time. Even though I didn't actually see Creature from the Black Lagoon until doing research for this, but I've known about it forever. Also, Shape of Water. With a little bit of research, there was going to be a couple different remakes of Creature of the Black Lagoon, and Guillermo del Toro was going to do one of them, but then he dropped it and then kind of came out with The Shape of Water as more of like a inspired by than a full on the Universal. I think they were going to do a Dark Universe or whatever. What was it? The Dark Universe? Universal?
Yeah, that's what they were calling it before it got canceled.
Yeah, before Tom Cruise screwed it all up and made an action movie. Anyways, um, yeah. So, what was there was oh, and I also saw this true crime documentary called the I Will Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. It was on HBO. Who was married to Patton Oswalt, who was finding the Golden State Killer, and all that. It was referenced a lot with her relationship with, she liked watching old movies with Patton Oswalt, her husband at the time, and then uh, the Creature of the Black Lagoon came up, and they used a lot of that in her, like, I don't know, her memoirs. It was something discussed and also used as kind of a metaphor later on for this guy who, real life stalker, rapist, killer in California. So it all, I don't know, it was all kind of like leading up to this. That's probably why I put this one on there too, because I try not to forget about those Universal movies. Because whether I watched them a lot as a kid, they've always been kind of like a staple through either things I've seen, or inspired, or yeah, I don't know how to say it. Yeah, the inspiration for things that I've grew up with. So like Monster Squad. I'll end with Monster Squad. What do you guys think?
I mean, that's a Monster Squad sold me. I was kind of unsold before that, since, like you said, he's probably more recognizable than the Invisible Man, but also, definitely less movies about him. But like I said, you got me with Monster Squad.
So I mentioned that there was a worse pick. This is the worst pick. This here's the thing: is that this was kind of like a shitty ripoff of King Kong. And if we're gonna put one or the other, I would put King Kong over this. The best thing that the Creature from the Black Lagoon did was like this running spear slash hug off the side of the boat. That was fun. Uh, this didn't have like the dread associated with it that you get from pretty much any of the other ones of the Universal era. Uh, and it doesn't. I mean, yes, Monster Squad. I feel like I would absolutely have used that as my crutch for an argument if I had to make an argument for it because of my love for Monster Squad. But since I'm arguing against this, I will say I didn't find The Shape of Water all that great. And there's a reason why the movie didn't get made, because it wouldn't have made money. Like, we want to make fun of the Mummy. The Mummy probably made more money with Tom Cruise doing an action movie, which Creature from the Black Lagoon would have ended up being pretty much an action movie on a fucking boat. Like, it's not like you can't really do too much unless you go really, really, really dark here. Like, I mean, shit. Hypothermia exists. Hypothermia is basically the ice version of Creature from Black Lagoon, except it was recorded on Sacandaga Lake. Okay, like I don't know. I don't feel like its legacy is there. Like, it has a legacy, but it's kind of like the Children of the Corn legacy. It's not a good one. Even the Children of the Corn movie called Legacy. You know, I feel like this is probably, I don't know. He feels like the joke of the fucking Universal monsters. He really does. I wish he would have been slightly more brutal in the movie. Like, I don't know. Didn't it seem like he was less brutal than, say, Dracula was? Or Wolfman or Mummy, even though it came out, like, what, a decade or two later, right?
Yeah, 54, like all those other, I mean, especially The Mummy came out in like the early 30s.
Yeah, so I'm surprised that they didn't try upping the ante a little bit in terms of either scare value. Like, obviously they weren't going to go for blood value or anything, but scare value could have benefited this a lot. And I will say
Well, that's
I'll say this. The highlight of the movie is how the lead actress, her hair was always on point. She's on a boat with dudes. None of them appear to be hairstylists. I can't imagine that she had like a freaking hair dryer or, much going on, but she could get in the water, get that hair wet. 3 minutes later, it would be styled as if like somebody spent 4 hours on it. So kudos to her for getting that in her contract. That's what I take away from it.
Yeah, it was definitely more like a sci-fi vibe to it and like monster movie. And like the second one, it actually kind of makes you feel sorry for the creature because they just show up to his turf and yeah, it is very like King Kongish.
The
second one,
like
the second one does
an aquatic King Kong, right?
Yeah, it really did have that feel to it. But I don't know, those movies, like Monster Squad where I grew up, I thought that was pretty cool. And I really liked the creature in The Shape of Water, and I liked the take on it. And it, the monster isn't the monster. But that's, a story that's been done a lot of times.
I like the idea
Universal.
that it's a prequel story about how Abe Sapien from Hellboy came to be.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chris.
All right.
So,
are we good to move on, Kent? You want to yell at Kevin some more?
Give me time. We're going to get there eventually, but I'm done yelling.
I can't wait till you get to talk. But, all right. So I got number 20. What the hell is this? 22?
22.
22. With The Predator, also known as a Yautja, if you read the comics. I don't want to say too much because we've had a bunch of different ones over the years, but I just really think that the movie itself isn't that great. We've had this discussion before. Some of the ones that I think follow on are better, but it's, I would say, one of the top two iconic sci-fi / horror designs for creature designs. Between the invisibility, the mask with like the tentacle dreadlocks, when it comes off, the way that the mouth opens up sideways, well, the jaw opens up sideways besides the mouth, like the weaponry that it uses, a lot of stuff that hadn't been seen before the first one came out in 1987 and has been copied a lot since then, whether in decent movies, shitty movies. I'm like what the hell? Outlander with Jim Caviezel had a lot of the stuff going on similar to that with like their version of Grendel. I think it's kind of like a harder thing to do for like Halloween. Like I've seen people do like kind of the old school. Do you remember when we were kids and they would have like the kind of plastic-y shirt and pants thing and the stiff plastic mask that you'd wear over your face with
Yes.
the rubber band kind of thing. Hold on, like I've seen versions of that, but I've never seen somebody do like a really good live version of the actual makeup because it would be expensive as hell and a lot of work to get there. But
I had a sweet Snoopy costume just as you just described.
I had a merman costume from He-Man, who I guess is pretty close to the creature from the Black Lagoon, huh?
Monster Squad.
Both named Gilman.
I mean, like one of the things I've liked is how they've slightly iterated on the creature over the years as they've gone through new ones, but they're all still recognizably Predators. So yeah, I just think it's a really cool look. Like Kent said, it's visually appealing. The movies are pretty successful, and if somebody sees it, they can pretty much recognize. Okay, I don't know which movie that's from, but it's a Predator.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised that this made the top 25 and not The Thing. I'm not mad about that. I think The Thing is the better movie of anything that Predator had, but as far as a character goes, I think Predator would have to go in. Yeah, I have no real gripe with this one. Plus, the original Predator, for how it stands out like a sore thumb in today's culture, was like the fucking manliest man of manly movies, like, for a while. So, and the Predator, was one of the 5 coolest characters in that movie.
Are we hitting up The Thing in honorable mentions?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, because I want to talk about it a little bit, but I won't if we're doing that later. Okay.
Yeah. So I would say this is, on the sci-fi end, this probably is like my number 2 sci-fi horror icon, which, I mean, I think we all agree with the number 1 will be. So yeah, I like this being in the list. I think I had it in my top 50 when I was trying to narrow everything down.
Yeah, I didn't pick the Predator. I kind of tried to coming up with the list. Some things I kind of separated it from because it was so like I don't know. There was just the Predator and another one that we're going to get to were movies I grew up with, and I guess they are, but I never really looked at them as horror. I definitely consider it, but because of that thought, I kind of left them off. I wasn't sure if that was what we were going for, but yeah, the Predator is super iconic. I remember I wanted to get an Atari Jaguar just because there was the Alien versus Predator video game, and I was super pumped about that. I don't know if I've talked about it on the show, but
not because of the 64 bits of graphics?
No. Well, that was that. It looked cool in the magazine that I saw. I've never played it, but I wanted it so bad. Whatever that toy store was in Amsterdam had it. But by the time it was affordable to get, the whole console and everything was pretty much like bankrupt. Yeah, it wasn't going anywhere.
Did you ever play it at our house? Because we got it.
No.
And I kind of regret that we got it.
You got that game?
And the Jaguar.
Yeah.
And there were not very many good games on the Jaguar. But I will say this, that in terms of jump scares, I pulled my back playing that game.
You could be the soldier, the alien, or the Predator, and I thought that was so cool. And I was like,
it was cool that they each one played different too. They had different mechanics for all 3 of them.
Oh wow, yeah, it looked awesome. So that was definitely that. Yeah, so and even the Predator itself, because when I rewatched Predator 2, I looked up a bunch of stuff about it, and because I love looking up movies from my childhood and then going back and looking at things like reviews and how it did at the box office and things that just didn't matter to me because I never went to the movies to see the Predator movies. I was too young. Uh, and I don't even know if Gloversville got Predator 2. It probably did, but I don't know. Or Johnstown. Yeah, Gloversville doesn't have a theater. So, um, yeah. Uh, but I did look up that each Predator was distinctly different because it was like human beings that the face would have different features, which I guess in some ways hurt Predator 2. That was one of the things it was criticized about. But I now going through and watching the movies, I do think that's cool. And with Prey, they went like that's the only one that I think if you just saw the face, you could be like, that looks like a predator, but that's not the predator, without the context of it being, you know, so far as a prequel. Um, but yeah, but with the armor on it, it is they're all look the same. So yeah, Predator rules. I love the first one, especially. But that was, just one of the. My dad says it's the first VHS movie that we owned. He's just dropped $80 on it, and so we just watched it for my entire youth, and I still watch it today. So
That's pretty cool.
That,
That's pretty
that
cool.
was $80 well spent.
yeah, no, it was awesome. Yeah, I've seen it so many times, so many times. So, and going back into it, I still appreciate it even more on different aspects of the film, of not really like maybe the action or the special effects, but the way that it's shot and just the stillness of the jungle and some of that, Cook with all the leaves and then Cook doing the shh thing. That was,
And the jacked arm.
yes. I mean, that movie is just, the whole entire movie is iconic to me. Like every character, from Apollo Creed to Jesse the Body to, uh, and I just found out that Shane Black, who ended up directing the last Predator movie, The Predator, was, in the movie. So shout out to that.
All right. I think we're going to not spend a lot of time on number 21 just because we spent many hours last month talking about it. But 21 we have as Dr. Hannibal Lecter. I think that it's pretty easy to see, besides being, an Academy Award win for Anthony Hopkins, that just the whole idea of that straitjacket, draculated patient strapped to the gurney with the mask to prevent the biting on has kind of just become iconic. I mean, Silence of the Lambs really solidified him into cultural consciousness that year. And I haven't really seen too many Halloween costumes, but I've seen a ton of merchandise with him on it. I mean, it's spread out past, the TV show. He was one of the characters in an epic rap battle of history. So, like I said, we talked about this ad nauseum last month. I thought it would be an interesting conversation to have him included on this list because I know Kent thinks Silence of the Lambs is more of a thriller than a horror movie, and I'm interested in getting into that in our podcast for November, but we'll come back to that later. So I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on this one, Kent.
Well, see, this is where I do and say something nice. To quote or kind of quote something that Kevin said previous month, Hannibal is horror for people who are not horror fans. And I still think like that's honestly the smartest thing Kevin has ever said on this podcast because I fully, wholeheartedly agree with it. And I've even gone on record and like talked to other people and used that ideology when talking about it. Yeah, here's the thing. I got a few picks coming up, and I've got to defend myself why this isn't horror and why my picks are horror. And so I'm going to be in for a shit show. So the less I say now, the better off I am. So kudos for people that like this and think that it's horror. I have no problem if you think this is horror, then he belongs on the list. If you don't think it's horror, then you wouldn't put him on the list. That's all it is. If I thought he was horror, I would put him on the list easily.
Did you not put him on the list?
I mean, I
did not.
I thought Ken did.
I thought you did too. I know that you did list him as an option for.
Yeah, I had like 70 options, and he was one on there just because I was running down a bunch of options so you guys didn't have to put too much thought into this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just didn't vote for him. That's all.
It's the cannibalism aspect, and I don't think that was done in like such a mainstream way, and that is legitimately appalling and terrifying to people. So I feel like that is why, and it was really from watching the show that it made it click with me. Was like, oh, this is why it's horror. I mean, the dude is like eating people, but it was this very sophisticated, highbrow doctor, psychiatrist, cutting people up like pigs and eating them. It is something, it transcends horror. Why I do think he is a horror icon is because people think he's a horror icon. He's on those posters. He's in the conversation with Jason. I was looking up T-shirts, and I would say at least, 5 or 6 out of 10 he was on there with, the people that we're about to get into, more so than the ones we've discussed outside of it. It was specifically a Universal shirt, like we're just doing Universal stuff, then yeah.
To be fair, Kevin, I will offer this. Him and Sam are the only two that are mostly in orange, and that is for merchandise purposes a really good. It helps makes something stand out. So even if people didn't think it, but they were like, "This is gonna move because it's eye attractive," I do think like his color, his orange suit, does help make him more iconic in a merchandising standpoint, at the very least.
Oh,
do you
absolutely.
not agree with that?
No, I absolutely agree with that. And also, it's a simple costume too to do. I mean, like maybe not simple, but you can get like a straight jacket and the mask, and you're like, slick your hair back. You're Hannibal Lecter. Like everyone knows it.
Too soon.
I think that you touched on the other thing too, that why people feel that way, because it's the sophistication married to the cannibalism. Because I mean, like, if somebody in the Leatherface clan was eating somebody, or one of the characters from The Hills Have Eyes was a cannibal, nobody would really blink anything because they're already horrific in that regard. But then you have somebody who's a doctor, who's sometimes a psychologist, who's intelligent enough to be able to talk the person in the cell next to him into committing suicide, is also just running around eating people because he finds them offensive, I think is another factor that brings it in. I remember reading an article a year or two ago about how people distrust people who they feel are more intelligent than they are over like people who have more money than they do, because they think that there's always a possibility that they can become rich, but they don't realize that there isn't necessarily the possibility that they can become more intelligent.
Is that a quote from Hannibal Lecter? Because it sounds like one.
No, actually, it was on a political thing I was reading. They did a poll about that. But
checks out.
Go ahead.
I think that's great. Yeah.
All right. So moving on to number 20. And this character really doesn't have a name other than just the shark. And it's a different one in each of the movies. But the shark from Jaws.
Bruce.
Well, okay, yeah, Bruce.
The Bruce thing. I don't get it.
I still hold out the fact that sharks don't roar from Jaws the Revenge. But yeah, I mean, this could also kind of fit into that same category that we just talked about with Hannibal Lecter. Whereas, you know, it's you watch it now and it's almost less a horror movie and more of, you know, like a man versus nature or man versus society, you know, trying to get the beach closed down kind of movie. But I mean, the straight up fact is, you know, this movie made people afraid to go back into the water ever. You know, there are people who watch this movie and have never gone swimming again since. So I think that kind of alone qualifies it to be iconic. And I mean, we brought this up, I think, when we were doing the music episode years ago, Kent. But, you know, like how often that theme has been parodied, you know, with the Finn surfing through the water. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, even if you don't know, you know, technically what the shark's name is, you can recognize that that is supposed to be a reference to Jaws.
Yeah, and that's actually where he kind of gets the name Jaws because,
Yeah.
like, you know, when you see that, yeah, it's been done so much. And I mean, you think of all of the, am I jumping in here? But like all of the shark movies that are made now, there's so many of them. My niece is like, and her mom are like obsessed with them, so they watch every shark movie there is. So whether it's horror or not, but.
I mean, ideally, I don't think we get Shark Week without Jaws, and I don't think we get Sharknado without Shark Week. So, I mean, thank you.
So Ian Ziering doesn't have a career without Jaws?
Yeah, so
That is stupefying.
he should definitely be thanking Steven Spielberg for that.
I don't think he's got a career without Aaron Spelling, but that's a different podcast.
Kevin, do you not remember how great his hair game was?
Dude,
back
no,
in
I know.
the day?
That's what I'm saying. Aaron Spelling, dude. Steve, I met Ian Ziering. Actually, I scared him on the streets of Hollywood one time. I was eating ramen. I was in this band, and I was eating ramen on the side of the street on Hollywood, and there he was. He went up to this girl's, and I was just like, "Holy shit, it's Ian Ziering!" And fucking Steve from 90210, and all the people that I was with didn't know because they were all too cool to watch 90210 when they were a kid. But yeah, so anyways, I saw him. I kind of startled him a little bit, and then he paid no mind.
Did I ever tell you my my quick Ron Perlman
Oh yes,
story?
in New York City, right?
No.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't tell you, Kent?
Maybe.
We went down to New York City when we were doing Fantastics at Colonial Little Theater to check it out. It was still playing off Broadway at the time, and I remember as we were kind of wandering around after we watched it. We got some dinner and we were just tooling around, and you know, they had one of those pawn shops with like 20 TVs all in the window, and this was down in the Village, and I want to say. It was right around the time, it wasn't the Berlin Wall, but it was, you know, something like that significant was happening over in Europe. And so I stopped while, like, Jay and everybody else who was in there were walking on. And I just caught the news for a second, and I look over, and fucking Ron Perlman is standing right next to me, looking at one of the TVs in the window. And I'm like, I loved you in Beauty and the Beast. And then I had to run to catch up to, to everybody else.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he likes to stay informed. That guy.
You know what? I gotta make my own little Ron Perlman reference momentarily. So Dom sent me a link. Amazon had like all these horror DVDs and Blu-rays and 4K on sale yesterday and maybe today. So I end up getting the Larry Fessenden collection because I'm a huge fan of that man. And like the first actor listed is Ron Perlman, and I was like, I really feel super stoked right now that I'm going to get Larry and Ron Perlman on the same thing. Like, that brings joy to my heart that not much else can do aside from, like, midget porn and Slim Jims.
That is a really weird combo, but okay.
Larry and Ron or Slim Jims and midgets?
Slim Jims and midget porn. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. So, Bruce.
Jaws.
Anyways, moving on.
Oh, yeah. So, what was I just want to say. So, yeah, Jaws though does not feel like a horror film to me anymore. And actually, it never did. But I do know exactly what you mean because he does make the posters of the horror icons. I don't know about like more times than not, but like enough times. Uh, but yeah, it just always seemed like a summer blockbuster film. But I guess that's just how Steven Spielberg does.
Yeah, this was one of the very last ones I cut from my top 25. And, originally I was just going to come in and be like, it's not horror. But it is. It is horror. It's easily recognizable. The music, it's an icon. It's probably better than whatever the hell I had at number 25. I don't know what that is anymore, but yes, I do. I had The Thing. I'm not sad that I listed The Thing and not Jaws because Chris got Jaws on this list, so I'm not disappointed in myself anymore. It's a good pick.
Thanks.
Solid.
I mean, we all picked them. I mean, I don't think one of us was able to give enough points to get one in there, were we?
Oh, wait, I did pick him. Kevin didn't pick him.
I did not pick him. No,
Kevin, you ass.
no. You picked him after saying he is not horror.
I'm misreading my own spreadsheet. I'm
like,
embarrassed right now.
I'm like, I don't know, because I don't think about it when I think of Halloween, and I know that this is not exactly that, but it's sort of, horror Halloween is because we're doing this in October, and that's kind of,
Kevin, is
costumes
Jaws
one
a
of the
bigger
things.
icon than the creature from Black Lagoon?
Is it a bigger icon? Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. A bigger horror icon? Because that's what we're doing. I don't know.
Okay.
Ask my dad. He was out when the first Jaws movie came out, so he probably would agree with you. But he also is the one that instilled the Universal monsters. Like the
Yeah,
staple.
I mean, if an argument for Jaws is almost like an argument for Blair Witch, like I kind of feel like they kind of almost go hand in hand. Although Blair Witch doesn't have the music, but like think about it, that was parodied probably just as much as Jaws has been, and people didn't want to go out in the woods for summer, like they didn't want to go out in the water for like. I don't think Jaws and Blair Witch get compared enough, and I think it's one of the best comparisons out there.
Not even close. I don't know if like Blair Witch got as wide of a spectrum as Jaws.
No, it wasn't done by Spielberg. It was a sci-fi advertisement thing, but for that generation, it counts.
Oh yeah. It was on that split screen show that was on IFC, like obscure. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That it was like complete indie film.
It was that generation's Jaws because we didn't. Chris, you're not old enough to live through Jaws, right?
No, I was born 2 years after it.
Okay, so none of us were around to be frightened by Jaws, but we all got to live through Blair Witch and laugh at jackasses. Like, there's something to be said for that.
No, there is. I had an acid flashback while I was watching the Blair Witch in the theater. I was like 17 years old, and I had an acid flashback because of that movie.
Kudos to you.
Yeah. I had a bad experience of chasing someone in the woods. Like nothing really bad happened, but like during the experience, it was really like intense. So when they're like running through the woods, like near the end of the movie, and with the flashlight in the woods, that like made me. I don't know if it was an acid flashback, but it was something that like really made me uncomfortable and scared, and like I felt like I was in something else. So yeah, no, Blair Witch definitely. Good point. I'll end on that. Good point, Kent.
Thanks.
All right, moving on.
Okay, I think this is me, number 19, right?
Yep.
Number 19.
Carrie White. Most and only iconically played by Sissy Spacek. And Brian De Palma's 1976 horror classic based on the Stephen King novel of the same name, Carrie. Before she was the coal miner's daughter, her crazy Jesus mother begged her not to go to her prom, telling her they're all going to laugh at you. We started with Carrie getting her period, getting bullied, and getting revenge in a full circle of life in blood. This horror icon covered in pig's blood, center stage at her prom, is for all the awkward freaks with strict parents that got bullied for being different and I guess having their period. Uh, yeah, that alone I think is pretty simple, right? Like if you see it, you know it, or if you don't even say Carrie, you're like that's very familiar. Um,
Yeah, as a kid, I know I'd seen the movie, but I could only really remember that there was a girls' locker room scene, there was a bucket of blood, and Carrie just killed shit. Like that's all like my 6-year-old mind could really comprehend, and I was like, this chick's cool. So yeah, I think that it isn't that kind of almost like part of a definition of being an icon. Like you can remember as a kid for all just like this cool shit, even though you're not fully comprehending it, so to speak.
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I wouldn't have put her anywhere in my top 50. Like, I think it's a great movie. I think it's a great performance. But again, it's one movie. If you showed her without the blood on her, oh shit! Even if you showed her with the blood on her, like how many people today are going to recognize that's Sissy Spacek from Carrie?
They're probably gonna think she was in the fucking Descent, man.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Really? You think so? You think people know the Descent more than they know Carrie? General people,
A certain generation
a
does.
certain
Yeah,
generations
they
of horror
probably do.
film.
Because they got the Chloe Grace Moretz version, which cut out the great opening scene. Like they handled that with kitty gloves, like jackasses, and the movie lost a lot of its impact because that opening scene really sets the fucking bar. So yeah, I can see. I don't think Carrie probably is the icon
I
to
like,
people.
yeah,
You know,
like I work with people who were born after 9/11 now, and I've had to have this conversation. Like, hey, do you remember this really old movie from like 1998 called The Matrix? I'm like, are you fucking kidding? So, I mean, you add another 20, 21 years, 22 years onto that, and it's just that much more removed from a generation, you know?
No, this is why. And The Matrix
Yeah.
is great, but Carrie, the movie itself is one of the greatest movies of all time. It is a lot of people's favorite movie of all time, or like horror. And I think Stephen King fans. I think there's more Stephen King fans made every day, and it's the first one. I think it also changed the way we saw horror films with that ending. So I think Carrie is always going to be in the conversation of horror, but like also and great movies in American cinema. I mean, the cinematography, it's the best cinematography I've seen of all of the movies I've watched in the last month, easily.
what's fascinating, I would say, is that Carrie is one of the few horror icons, even if she's not high up on your list, she's still one of the very few horror icons that's arguably the not the antagonist. Like not the villain.
It's debatable too once you get to the end of the movie. Is the mother
Yeah,
the
it's
antagonist?
debatable once you get to Rage Carrie too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
But I mean, like at the end, you're like, is she the, is our protagonist turn into the antagonist throughout the?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I
a
think
good
you can
question.
argue the fact that, like, yes, the bullying she goes through is horrific, but murdering an entire town is probably, a little bit past that in terms of consequence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
it like actually does happen in real life at high schools.
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely
Relevant,
especially
relevant.
nowadays.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
more
very
relevant than
relevant.
ever. Yeah, I've noticed that when I was watching this scene, I was like, oh man, I don't even know if you could like make this in like metaphor, you know? Like it's not like Heather's where they're like literally killing their 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 classmates, but um yeah, it's pretty fucking intense. Yeah, so I feel like that people movie going fans, like people who like movies, maybe not the average Joe, but like movie. I think people who like cinema are gonna always come. You know, someone's gonna be like, "Oh, have you seen Carrie?" You know, if you've seen Scarface, I feel like Carrie comes up in that conversation if we're talking about Brian De Palma.
It's probably something known by 2/3 of the viewing audience, but that number used to be significantly higher. I don't know. I think 2/3 is probably a fair number at this
Yeah,
point, given the age of it. All right, my turn.
Hey, Ken finally gets to talk.
All right, number 18. And this shocked me that all three of us had this gentleman, the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt, the TV series, Demon Knight, Bordello of Blood, the fucking cartoon. What was that called? Was it just called Tales from the Crypt Keeper or something like that? I don't know.
was it just called The Crypt
It
Keeper?
might have been. I think it's like on Tubi maybe for free to stream or Plex or something like that. It's still available somewhere for free to stream. It's actually not that bad for a kids cartoon. Um, I wanted to come
That's
like
awesome.
powerful and try to imitate the laugh, and I tried it like a few times before we started the podcast. Nope, I just can't. You realize how difficult imitating his iconic laugh is? It's really difficult. Um, it it's weird because I mean he didn't have his own movie. He was a host of an anthology TV series. He had stupid little quips like "Hello, boils and ghouls," or he liked using the word ooze quite a bit, and he'd just make his little gory puns and. Sometimes he would actually interact with like I don't know. He interacted with Arnold Schwarzenegger when Arnold did his episode. Uh, he I don't. I'm honestly really super happy that he made the list because of everything else, he's the only one that didn't like. He wasn't a star of a horror movie. He never was. But anybody of a certain generation knows him. Even if you never watched Tales from the Crypt, there are people that have never watched Tales from the Crypt, but they see him or they hear the laugh and they know who he is. And I think that is what makes him so iconic. Unfortunately, we're never going to get fucking Tales from the Crypt again because of stupid legal issues. I think it's the family of the dude who originally had EC Comics. When he died, all the rights got mixed up. I don't know. I feel like I posted this or shared this with you guys at some point. So we're just never going to get this again, unfortunately. I don't know if we'll ever get another movie. Maybe John Kassir, who was the voice, he's got to be getting up there in years at this point. He's definitely a product of a time when ABC, HBO was pushing boundaries of what TV could be. Like we all kind of associate good TV like with HBO. Yeah, well, those motherfuckers were doing this shit, long before, Sopranos. They were doing this type of good quality. If you were a horror fan, a comedy fan, or just, wanted something to just kind of chill with. And the Crypt Keeper welcomed us each and every week. Even the last season in Britain. He still welcomed us. He had that great opening, the opening sequence where we go through the mansion, have the great music. And I will say one of life's greatest regrets is me never buying the life-size Crypt Keeper at Spencer's. I didn't get paid. Like I saw it. I was like 2 days away from getting paid. I got paid, went to go get it. It was gone. Really, I would say that's one of like my 20 greatest regrets in my whole life is oddly not owning the life-size Crypt Keeper. So that's how he affected me. why did both of you guys actually include him?
You want to go first?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, okay.
No, go ahead.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
So, as I said earlier, and why Carrie is on my list is I am a product of, somewhat of a horror fan. My dad, he always gravitated towards that stuff. We had HBO, so we watched. When was that show on? When was the 1992, 93?
89 to
89
96.
was the first. Yeah, I
Yeah,
watched it.
dude.
I watched it from day one with my dad. So uh, that was a major influence of a lot of my choices on this list of stuff I grew up with. But even if my dad wasn't, I would have known who the Crypt Keeper was. But because of that, he's absolutely instilled in me. My cousin, Tim, shout out to Tim Person, um, who was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years older than me, or maybe like three, yeah, like 4 or 5. He had the comics. And my dad is his uncle, and his dad are brothers, and my uncle Ken, rest in peace, had horror films on beta and let my cousin Tim watch everything. So when I'd go over there, I would watch, everything unedited. I didn't have to close my eyes for all the boobs. Um, that that was the only stipulation my dad really had was, whenever, and Tales from the Crypt definitely had some boobs. And throughout the movies, yeah, we Demon Knight, we rented it as soon as it came into the video store. We rented it the first weekend it was out. And then when it hit HBO, we recorded it on VHS and we had it forever. So, and in Bordello of Blood, the same thing. I don't think the show was still on when Bordello of Blood came out. I'm not sure if it was still on when Demon Knight came out, but it.
Yes, it was. So Demon Knight came out in 95. Bordello of Blood came out in 96, the final season. And interestingly enough, there's actually a third Tales from the Crypt movie called Ritual that just was kind of like tacked on, kind of like how Creepshow 3 isn't really Creepshow 3. It's the same. Nobody knows what Ritual is.
Is it
He's
John
not
Kassir,
even in
Crypt Keeper?
at all. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
right.
So it's not.
The girl from
But I know
Dirty
what you mean,
Dancing
yeah.
is like the lead in it. I can't remember her name, but yes, she's the lead in it.
Jennifer
It's
Grey.
Okay, but whatever. So yeah.
And I also worked at the mall, and then I worked in the mall like 2003 to 2000 in Spencer's in Nashville from 2003 to 2005, and then 2005 to 2006 I worked in San Diego. And yeah, we had the life-size Crypt Keeper doll, and always like having friends that were really into horror. Like it was just always something there. I mean, I moved in to my mom's house back in 2017, and my stepfather has randomly one disc of season 3 of Tales from the Crypt, and I didn't have streaming or anything, so I watched everything in the house. So, I've seen it kind of recently, and I didn't realize how hard it was to get because I probably should be picking up those seasons on DVD.
Yeah, even Voodoo used to have them.
When I
bought
see them.
the first 2 seasons, and now you can't even buy
Yeah.
them on streaming anywhere.
Yeah, I don't. Why does you were talking about HBO? Why did HBO Max
Because of
Max
the
not
family.
have all
The
of
family of the dude who did EC Comics, they still
But-
have partial rights to it. So
No-
if they're basically just saying no, we don't want to make money. I don't know why. I don't want to call them assholes because I don't know them personally. I don't know their rhyme and reason. It's not like a Victor Miller
Yeah,
situation.
I gotcha.
I don't think.
It has something to do with William Gaines,
Yeah.
though, right?
Yeah.
Oh, he owned
Right.
the comic.
So I don't even know if they could even do like a Crypt Keeper show and call it something else. I don't know. I don't think so though. That's why Creep Show should have gone to HBO because people would. I think people would flock to it instead. It went to Shudder, which is fine, but I really think it would have done better on HBO Max or Max now, whatever the fuck it is.
It probably would have been held to a higher
And
standard
more tits?
for sure.
That's the higher standard, Kevin. That is.
Yeah. Okay. For HBO, yeah. I mean, that's what they're in the business for. Like, we can show tits. We got to show tits because we need subscriptions. We need people to subscribe to our whatever was it, like an extra $10 a month or something.
Yeah.
When you got cable.
I mean, and it's never been more apparent because there's some like nude TV game show on Max now, and I was like, see, they know tits equal subscriptions.
Mm-hmm. Before we get to Chris, can we all just try our best Crypt Keeper laugh? I'll start. Yeah.
Chris, you want to try one?
No, Kevin. That's pretty good, Cat. Cat,
that was great.
I rarely say this in our podcast, but you were 100% right about why this guy is iconic.
My God, am I having a heart attack right now?
What it really boils down to is that even if you didn't watch Tales from the Crypt, anybody our age knew who the Crypt Keeper was. And again, he was never the star of the episodes, but he usually had some decent. Yeah, every once in a while he had or just a super corny joke, but he usually had some decent jokes, and he hit that bar where it was funny and in horror. There were some episodes that were actually pretty fucking creepy, but like you said, like even if you never watched the show, you knew who the Crypt Keeper was. I mean,
and like I said before, I like a good host. I have respect for a good host.
Yep.
Yeah, Richard Dawson agrees.
And there was a couple times where the Crypt Keeper, where you would think, oh, the Crypt Keeper's here, it's going to be funny, and there was a joke, but it still was pretty creepy. It was still pretty scary the way that it ended, because it still would like tie in with the end of the story into his segue out of the. I don't know, but
I mean, how many episodes ended with somebody with like a cleaver chopping off like a limb of his? I would say that happened at least once every 10 episodes, minimal.
Yeah, but he was so cool with it, though.
Cool with it.
My memory serves. Anyways, okay.
Right, we want to do 17.
Yeah, well, let's move on. 17, as we alluded to earlier in the episode, is probably the most iconic creature design from a sci-fi / horror movie in the Xenomorph from Aliens. Again, I don't really think this is one we need to talk about too much because at this point, we're what, 6 years in, Kevin? 7 years in?
Yeah,
we've talked about this movie a ton. I think I might esteem it a little higher than you do, but like it scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, and no matter what they did with the sequels, the first one still holds up as just a genuinely well written, scary movie with one of the best examples of a female heroine. Well, I guess that's kind of an oxymoron, but a heroine character in Ellen Ripley. So there you have it.
Yeah, I'll agree that you have it rated higher than me, and the only reason why probably is because I didn't get around to watching it until sometime in my 20s, when had I grew up on it, it would have been higher. I am all but assured that would be higher if I'd seen it in the 80s, I still think Aliens won the all times. So, high praise.
Yeah, I don't think I put Alien down either.
No, because I think you said, though, before that you wasn't sure with the sci-fi stuff, so I think that's why you left them out.
Yeah, and also like Halloween horror, but yeah, it is it's that fine line blurred in. But yeah, the
I
first
mean, come
Alien
on. It
is
might not necessarily have boobies for Kent, although, Sigourney did come close to showing most of hers. But, I mean,
Yeah.
how many other people on this list have, like,
you can see
a head made out of condoms that kind of looks like a penis? So.
on this list.
I mean, aside from Tony Todd.
Wait, what are we talking about again?
That's probably a different iconic list.
Oh, that's another podcast. Sorry. Yeah, no. He absolutely the xenomorph, and from the original, also like Aliens was one of the first 5 movies I think we owned. Like I remember Aliens, Sound of Music, Top Gun, Predator. This is Three Amigos. These were like the movies that I grew up with. That we owned the actual boxes and cases and yeah, so absolutely. And also I think some of those that like Alien also I feel like is going to come into the conversation next month. So but yeah, definitely a great horror icon, and I definitely don't disagree with anything you guys said. Like I remember watching Aliens before I really knew like what horror movies were, because I mean this is before I saw Pet Sematary or it even came out, and this was Aliens, not Alien, because I saw that first, because it would have been a little bit too boring for me then, and it was a little bit slower paced for me at 13 when I saw it, but my dad says, and I've said this before, but this was the scariest movie he's ever seen in the theater and considers it the scariest movie of all time, the original Alien. So, on that note,
After having an MRI a few weeks ago, and that claustrophobic feeling you get from Alien, I experienced that MRI tube, and like as I'm laying there with my eyes closed, I really kind of replayed Alien in my head a little bit. So even at the quote unquote doctors, I'm thinking about Alien. It's on my mind.
All right. Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, and I actually just recently saw Spaceballs, and the end of that movie actually has John Hurt reprising that scene. And so when you said that, can I just be like, what did he have? Like the tuna melt.
Oh no, not again.
Kudos, yeah. Respect to John Hurt for doing that. I mean, I know Mel Brooks already proved himself, but to do Spaceballs, respect. So.
All right. Man, I'm not looking for this. All right, number 16. Norman Bates. Now, I had him ranked really high, and the reason for that is because I can't, so you go from Universal Monsters, and then, you have this long gap before, we hit the 70s. There's this gap where we don't have horror icons, and I know that I'm sitting here saying Hannibal's not a horror icon, but Norman Bates is, and I put down your fucking pitchforks and torches, people. I get it. For its time though, this was kind of cutting edge horror for its time, and I can't think of a more iconic horror person from the 60s. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, Christopher Lee back, was he doing that in that?
Yeah, you had a
Sure.
lot of the Hammer stuff going on in the 60s. That's really when they kicked off.
Still, I think to the mainstream audience, I think Norman Bates is that bridge character for horror icons, by and large. Having watched Psycho 1, 2, and 3 today, I'd seen Psycho plenty of times. I saw the Vince Vaughn one in the theater, which I'm not mad at, but, whatever. I'm not even going to get into that. Anyway, Anthony Perkins played it great. He played it great in Psycho 2. Psycho 3, he directed it. Anthony Perkins actually directed it. Included more tits, despite I didn't know he was a gay man. Did you guys know that?
Anthony
No.
Perkins? No, I didn't.
He almost fired the one girl that is called Red in part 3. She was also the girl that showed her tits in Friday the 13th part 5. And she was also in Slumber Party Massacre. She's a girl that just showed her tits a lot in 80s movies. She apparently made some homophobic remark on set, and like Anthony Perkins like almost just canned her ass that day. So props to him for that. But he was a professional, and I don't know, like he didn't have great success aside from this role, but he played it so well, and I think the role in and of itself is so iconic that, you know, however many decades later, we get Bates Motel. And that TV series, I think I only watched the first season and a half, and it was really good. And we were kind of talking about this before the podcast. It's definitely something I kind of want to revisit maybe in December and just binge watch the hell out of it. Because I remember really liking it. And in part 4, what little bit I did see, they had Henry Thomas play the role of younger Norman, and they were kind of trying to touch on it, but I think Bates Motel obviously goes much more in depth, probably with much dumber premises, but at least you get the story there.
I think that's shit. It's dumber than the movie that you think is shit. Is it bad? Is it that bad?
Here's the thing. Part 3 throws this weird monkey wrench into everything, and this is going to be spoiler territory, whatever. Like, I'm still kind of confused who the hell his mom is now. Because we had part 1, we kind of know who the mom is. Part 2, they kind of like, no, this might be the mom. Then part 3, they're like, well, you know. And I'm like, no, I don't know anymore. I'm very confused. So I don't know. I still highly recommend it, but it does get a little odd for me. But nonetheless, I have him this high because he's the perfect bridge horror icon that gets us from Universal to Leatherface, pretty much, or Damien. I don't remember when Omen came out, but I think Leatherface.
80?
Omen was 70s or
Oh, was it 79?
Was it 69? I thought it was pretty earlier than I ended up thinking. You know, after going back over it.
with old ass Gregory Peck.
76.
Oh.
Okay, so Leatherface. He serves as the bridge between Universal to Leatherface. Quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, and for that he gets a. I mean, Psycho is, if you consider Psycho a horror movie, it's one of the top 3 horror films ever made. If you don't consider it a horror movie, that's okay. But if you consider it a horror movie, it is arguably one of the top 3 horror films ever made. So that's my rationalization. What do you fellas think?
I think it's a rationalization. Like, literally just a rationalization. No, I really like... Well, I like Norman Bates, but, like, almost by any metric, it's a straight-up thriller, you know, versus... But, I mean, I don't have a problem including him on the list, because we've done a couple other thrillers. But, I mean, if you look at, like, kill count versus, you know, say, like, Hannibal Lecter or even The Invisible Man, lower. If you look at the amount of, you know, violence and graphicness of the kill, it's not even comparable to, you know, a lot of stuff. But, I mean, one thing that Alfred Hitchcock knew how to do was, you know, sell a movie, you know, like the stunts that he pulled with Psycho, you know, not allowing people to exit the movie after they started playing, you know, not allowing people to enter the movie after it started playing, you know, that way, you know, you could keep the twists intact, you know, which I don't know how the fuck they would manage something like that today.
They wouldn't?
Yeah, exactly. You know, like putting in, you know, like barf bags into theaters, you know, that way, you know, I don't doubt they were very often needed, but, you know, hyping it up, you know, to the audience coming in to see the movie. Yeah, I mean that's I guess one of the biggest questions I have for next month. Like serial killers, I find to be horrific. Probably one of the scariest things, other than the general apathy we have as human beings towards each other. But a lot of movies fall more into that thriller slash suspense thing than outright horror. And where's the line between a horror and a thriller in regards to a character like Norman Bates or Hannibal Lecter versus somebody like Michael Myers, say. Anyways.
I would even consider Norman kind of like on a weird level with Jaws when you're talking about like kill count and kill count and iconic music together. They're kind of siblings.
Yeah, you know what? That is very true. The music also really sets it. So okay.
And the staircase fall.
Yeah, it would inspired. Like it's considered the first slasher, or like the root of a lot of most slashers. I mean, was there a slasher movie before Psycho? Not one more.
I don't
successful?
remember when the Giallo movement started. I think that was late '60s, early '70s.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right.
So I don't know what the hell Europe was doing. I can speak for kind of like what's going on in America, but
yeah, that's what more meant.
There's so much shit going on in Europe at the time, like for horror, that I'm just oblivious on.
Hey, to be honest, too, like outside of Europe, even I'm completely oblivious on what was going on in like Japanese cinema before, like Akira Kurosawa.
Oh yeah,
who the fuck knows? China, shit, even there are still countries that I'm slowly getting, like India. Yeah, I wonder what Bollywood was like back in the '60s, or even now in their horror department. So
yeah, dude. I mean, even like Australia, I'm curious. Like, were they doing anything back then? Like, what were they doing? What was Mexico doing? Even I don't know. So it's a good question. Kevin, keep going.
So, yeah, okay, so I would say Psycho may be my favorite horror film if we're considering a horror movie. But I kind of see it as something more than that. I have some questions. First question is, when did Psycho 4 come out? Like, what kind of Henry Thomas are we talking here?
We're talking teenage Henry Thomas, so probably late teen. Hell, he could have probably been a little older and playing younger version because that's what we
Did it come out in the 90s or late 80s?
I think late 80s. Okay. I don't have it pulled up.
Okay, and then my other question is, did he kill in between, as far as the movies are concerned? Did he kill women before Marion Crane? Kind of. I've always felt like he did.
I mean, well,
was there more cars?
He killed his mom.
Yes, and then the dude.
Question mark. Yeah, but then that kind of gets. I don't know. I highly recommend people just to watch it and try to figure it out.
Well, the information from the first movie, anyways, that was.
Yeah, if you just go by that, then yeah.
It's just Marion Crane was the first person he killed since his mother.
I think so. That's my guess is that, but all that time he was psycho and hearing his mom's thoughts as him, so we don't know. Was he just throwing bodies in the little pond? I have no idea. They didn't, obviously we're probably never going to get that unless we get.
Yeah, well, Marion Crane was definitely not the first person he was spying on in the shower. So
straight peeking,
yeah. So that was definitely something that was happening, right? So
yeah.
It's a good question to think about next time. So all right, yeah, I think I'm good. I love Psycho, and it's almost, and to what you were talking about, it's a mixed bag of things, Chris. Like it also has, I would say, kind of like a noir feeling to it, also with the like noir thriller,
I would say it's like one of the earliest examples of something like From Dusk Till Dawn, where you have a movie that starts out in one genre and completely does a fucking, I don't want to say 180, but complete and tonal inversion, midway through the
Dude,
movie.
it takes 28 minutes before you meet Norman, and then it's 48 minutes, and then Marion's suddenly dead, and you're like, what the fuck? That was pretty interesting. If you didn't know anything about it, that would have been very weird.
Oh, I
right?
didn't know anything
Oh,
about
hell
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I watched it. My dad was like, "I know you don't like black and white movies, but Psycho is playing, and I think you'd really like it." And then I, for some reason, because I'm still really bad at it to this day, when people tell me to watch things, I went up and watched it, and it totally changed everything. My friends watched it, and they said they jokingly guessed the ending, but I don't think it was really presented. I don't think my dad was like, "Oh, there's a huge twist" or anything. You know, this is definitely before Sixth Sense and stuff came out. Before like that was like the thing to do in every movie. So yeah, so this is definitely a game changer.
Yeah. All right. We good to move on to 15?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do it.
All right. This was one of the two biggest surprises for me on this list, and I'm saying this is a surprise because I thought he'd be higher up, because I ranked him super high. And this is Jack Torrance from The Shining, and I had him like as my number 3 icon, and Chris had him like as 25th. Kevin had him as 21st, and clearly I'm overrating him in some capacity compared to these two guys. I'll go with this. I'll say everybody fucking still knows what The Shining is. I think 20-year-olds know what the fucking Shining is, because you can't get away from all the movies still kind of mimicking it. Even Hannibal had stuff from The Shining. You just can't get away from all the lines. There's just a ton of quotable lines. It's one of the all-time greatest performances by an actor in that type of a role. It's arguably the best Stephen King adaptation from any of his books. I know that's debatable, but I think the general consensus is that's probably number 1. I know Carrie's up there. I know there's a few others, but I think by and large, because Kubrick, I think it's probably number 1. Nobody's ever going to be able to do it again. Like you would have to go Heath Ledger and recreate the character, in my opinion, if you were ever going to try to reboot it. I know they tried in the 90s with Steven Weber. He did an admirable job. He did as good as Steven Weber can do, but it just isn't Jack. I will offer a few of my favorite lines. Words of wisdom. Lloyd, my man, words of wisdom. Wendy, I'm home. Wendy, darling, light of my life. I'm not going to hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your brains in. Give me the bat. Here's Johnny. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. I don't know. There's a lot to really discuss with The Shining. But we did the romantic couples, but we didn't go too in depth. But I mean, we could probably do a 6-hour frickin' podcast just on The Shining and not cover everything. So
I mean,
I'll leave it at
the
that.
whole reason we started this was because of The Shining. Going
sense.
back to the day when you were like, "Hey, you want to do a blog?" I mean, seriously,
all right, that makes sense. I didn't know that.
That kicked us off because we did
that's
the blog, that one blog on The Shining, and then you kept going, "Hey, you want to do it?" And then after a couple months where you and I were the only 2 people left blogging, you were like, "You want to do a podcast on Game of Thrones?" So yeah, I mean, we can definitely give it to The Shining. I disagree with you in one regard, though, is that, like, no, dude, I talk to 20-year-olds on a daily. Like, I was talking about this podcast with a couple people I play Destiny with, and they had no idea what the fuck The Shining was.
Have you unfriended them?
No, because I need people to raid with. So I mean,
fair enough.
but like, I really was considering not even putting him on the list just because, without that one specific frame, with the face behind the door, I think you could show people a lot of Jack Nicholson movies from that period of time, and if they're not an actual film aficionado or have seen them, they'd be like, "Oh, that's Jack Nicholson," but they wouldn't be able to pick out that's Jack Torrance. But like you said, it's been parodied so many times, especially just fucking here's Johnny. I mean, yes, he took that from Johnny Carson, but the way he delivered that line, you know, solidified it as his. So yes, I would agree. Like if I would say like if they did a remaster, especially like a re-release, not a remake, but just updated the film, maybe highlighted the stock, brought it up to like a 4K, did a re-release. This would enter the public consciousness again. But yeah, you're completely right with regards to why he is an iconic character.
I just want to toss this out there since I forgot to say this. Henry Thomas from Norman Bates fame also portrayed Jack in Doctor Sleep. So Henry Thomas getting shit done.
Wait, wait, he's Jack in Doctor Sleep?
Uh,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think I did know that, but yeah, it doesn't look like him. That was my problem with Doctor Sleep was uh, that they took the book and the movie and tried to make a sequel to both, and they're kind of which contradicts itself just because of the way that the book ends and the movie ends. Um, and I do think he did a good job, but the thing that annoyed me was the remake of The Shining, of like making it look like Jack Nicholson, like uh was yeah, I don't know. It I only saw the movie once. It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But
I think you gotta watch it a second time because I
I
felt
do.
very similar,
I own
and I liked
I
it a
own
lot
it.
better.
Yeah, I own it. Once I know that though, because I didn't know that going in. Now that I know it, I can see myself going. And then on to Chris. Do these 20-year-olds you hang out with not know what memes are? Because another criteria is memes. I think that if you showed them a meme with uh, Jack Nicholson, I think they would know that it's The Shining, or they would at least know the meme and know that it's like it is something still in popular culture
Yeah, it's
and can
definitely
be
meme culture.
and can be discovered. Um, so yeah, it is. It is. I don't know. I do also understand what you're saying, but I think overall, it's like you put Hannibal Lecter on the list, you can put Carrie on the list, but I'm also biased because I'm a product of Stephen King fans. My mom still reads Stephen King books. My dad loves Stephen King, um, so that's kind of what I grew up with. As far as the movie, I think like saying that it's the best adaptation, people would take that the wrong way because of the ending, and Stephen King expressed his dislike for it. But it is often considered the best movie based on a Stephen King book um, as source material, which is basically the same thing as an adaptation, but I don't know the wording of it. Um, yeah, and yeah, it's definitely it's up there, if not probably widely thought of as the best. Uh, yeah, yeah, you see him on those posters, and I don't know. I think The Shining is also one of like those because like Carrie, one of like people's favorite movies of all time is The Shining. Like whether they're really into Stephen King or horror, or just like big cinephiles and Kubrick fans. There's just so many ways. And
Dude, that movie's gotten dissected and picked apart so much, and still to this day, like people are like, "Oh, did you notice this? Did you notice this?" Like, I have to imagine in 40 years, people are still going to be picking this fucking movie apart somehow.
It's going to be completely rediscovered. Yeah, because it's such a solid film, and
Well,
people think that
that's what I was wondering though with Doctor Sleep. I thought that's why it would still be culturally relevant to younger people. That actually Chris surprised me by saying that it wasn't to younger people. I honestly thought Doctor Sleep would bring people back into that fold, and fuck, I don't know. A little surprised by that. When you thought that, like, if you liked Doctor Sleep, you'd go back and watch The Shining, or am I overthinking this?
Well, I think part of the problem with it comes is, like, if you haven't watched The Shining, then what's the reason to go watch Doctor Sleep? Do you know what I mean?
Ewan McGregor's hot ass.
Well, he's not quite the same, pick as he was, back in.
All right, Cliff
99.
Curtis's hot ass.
But I mean, do you get where I'm coming from though with that? Like,
I do get where you're coming from.
I do.
Yeah.
being a Stephen King fan or being a Shining fan, especially being a fan of the book Doctor Sleep, a fan of the book The Shining, the movie The Shining, and a Stephen King fan, and then seeing the way that the twain come together and linking it together was like one of the biggest draws of going to see, Doctor Sleep, and definitely interesting. I mean, that's a whole. I think we've talked about it, but that's a whole other podcast, like Kevin has been saying. But
Yeah.
If you cut one of those like threads out of there, then it was a successful movie, but it wasn't like a blow away successful horror movie like something like Barbarian was, where out of nowhere it took the world by storm, or some of the Conjuring movies have been shit like that. So not debating the merits, but yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna, like I said, Jack Torrance deserves to be on the list, but I really didn't think I could put him any higher on my list because, again, it's, at this point, 1.5 movies and a remake, and like a big thing, the older these movies get, the more like upfront, in your face, social media, time is now is the only thing I'm paying attention to kind of thing happens. The more this list would update and be completely different, even 5-10 years from now than it is with us, having experienced horror as we have growing up.
Yeah. And
We really need to do a podcast with like teenagers and do one of these lists.
It would be,
to see how
it would be really fucking interesting to see, like I would love to get, like one of our parents and then like, well, none of our kids are old enough, but like a niece or a nephew or something who's in their teens willing to come in and talk, like, oh, this is why I feel this way.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty interesting. Get a whole generational perspective on some of this stuff would be interesting to me. I also want to just
we got to get a 15-year-old, like, or someone like 15, 16-year-old for that would be like, because I don't know, my niece is like 11, so she would know, like, I don't know, some of the other ones that we're going to get into.
I just want to toss out before I forget it. When I was watching Psycho, and now we're talking about Shining, a podcast idea I had was like best, like either iconic houses in horror or like iconic settings in horror. I don't know if that's an idea you guys want to pursue, but I just want to toss it out here. You're welcome.
We can definitely think about that one.
Yeah.
All right. We good with Jack?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. On to one of my favorites. I was super happy to get this one. Number 14, my man, the fucking Candyman, Tony Todd. Accept no imitations, because that dude's just one of my favorites. Candyman still ranks up there among, for first time viewing, it ranks up there among the scariest movies I've ever seen. It came out in, 9 deuce, so gotta love that. He has like a good, I don't want to say good. His background story is very well drawn out. Whether you like what they do in the sequels or not, debatable. But you basically have this story of a African American dude. he was a slave, right?
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah,
sure. Yeah, and like he was working on like a plantation, and like the owner of this plantation, like he had a white daughter. Candyman was into it. Well, fucking race and shit. Needless to say, things did not go well for him. What the hell? His real name was Daniel Robitaille. Um, and yeah, he got fucked up with some honey and some bees, and you know, later on down the road, you find out that if you say Candyman 5 times in front of a mirror, he's gonna come and you gonna get got, and it's perfect. It's a perfect blend of kind of like a slasher, but with like a little bit of folklore going behind it, or urban legend, I guess. It was like beautifully combined with that, and then also kind of like with how inner city, like how I don't know. I think it, obviously touched a lot on black culture at the time, because it took place in Cabrini Green. I think I'm saying that
yeah.
right.
In Chicago.
Chicago, yeah. I don't know. It just that movie worked for me on every level, and the character himself, wasn't the greatest in part two and part three, but I don't know. I can't be the only person that got super super excited seeing him in the most recent Candyman. Like, I mean, he wasn't there for very long, but damn, was it not cool as shit. So, I think we all kind of have a soft spot for Tony Todd in our own way. Um, it's interesting that this franchise it really didn't get much love. Like, unlike some of the other franchises that gets movie upon movie, this stood strong at just 3 movies for a while. I say stand strong. It only had one good movie out of those 3, but thankfully it's brought back. And I think that there is a chance that we might get more in the future. I think there's a good chance of that. Um, the thing that held back Candyman is that I think horror fans know him. I'm not sure if the general public knows him. Like, I think the general public knows who Jack Torrance is. They probably know who Norman Bates is before they know who Candyman is. I think that hurt his standing when it came to voting. He had some good lines. Shit. I wrote some of them down, but it was always you, Helen. It was always you. Let's see. I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. Without these things, I am nothing. So now I must shed innocent blood. Come with me. And I don't know. I hope that because it was remade, it's more in the minds of younger people. Probably our grandparents' age or older, they may not give 2 shits about Candyman, and that also probably hurts the rating a little bit, is my guess. But I don't know, big fan. So I'd love to know what you guys got to say.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Um, yeah, you bring up a good point with the general audience. I think I went and saw Candyman Thursday night previews when it came out because I worked the weekend, so I wanted to see it before the internet ruined it, and I thought it ruled. Um, and there was a lot of people there for it. I think maybe because it was Jordan Peele's name was attached to it, that people were coming out because people go to the theater for his movies. Or at least
It carries a lot of weight now.
dude, it carries the Get Out. Yeah, really did it. And I mean, Us was out, I think, before that, but or was it? I don't actually remember which one I saw.
Us, Get Out, Us, and then Candyman, then Nope. I
Yeah.
think.
Okay, so yeah, it did, and I actually thought it was directed by him until like I don't know, I was looking it up the weekend before I saw, before I went to the theater, I saw that he didn't direct it, um, but I still went anyways, and so did a lot of people. So I don't know the actual numbers on Candyman. Like I feel like it wasn't. I feel like it probably wasn't a box office disappointment, but I don't know if it was, considered a success either. But it was well done, I think. Anyways, do you guys think that the remake was good?
Yes.
Okay.
I fucking hated it. I fucking couldn't stand it. I hated what they did with the lore. You know, I'm a Clive Barker fan from, the 90s. I did not like it. I don't think I can reiterate that enough.
Okay.
What didn't you? Was it kind of like the first half was kind of like cringy at
No,
times?
it's the fact that Candyman was a fucking villain, in the original movies. And here he's a force for social justice. I don't want to get into it because I don't want to bring us down to the podcast, but, changing it from being anybody who said his name 5 times in a mirror is just going to become a victim, no matter who you are, to you can have somebody say his name 5 times in a reflective surface and he'll come and kill the cops who are fucking harassing you is, pretty much a goddamn complete departure from the fucking lore that's already been established.
Would you say that was Jordan Peele's influence on that?
No,
If you had to guess?
no, I would say it's probably just the sign of our times. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
and to be fair, I'm not trying to take Candyman as a villain or a hero away from that community, but it's it's taking something in name and just completely changing it, and whether or not it's a good movie, which it was very competently made, and I love Yahya Abdul-Mateen as the second as an actor. The first thing I saw him in, Aquaman, I thought, who the fuck is this guy? He's a fucking joke. But after having seen him in Black Mirror and what the fuck was he in Watchmen? I didn't like the Watchmen show.
Oh yeah.
But I liked his portrayal in it. I was like, this guy's very talented, and it's a shame that James Wan wasn't able to bring that out in Aquaman.
Coleman Domingo is also great. In
Really good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love
like
that.
He was the best part.
I can't fault the performances or the production quality, but I can fault the writing for why I hated it. But Kent, again, you're right. I completely like Candyman scared the shit out of me the first time I watched it, and I won't say his name in the mirror. Fuck it. I just realized I better not say it anymore because my laptop surface is reflective. But
You go get hooked.
Right in front of me, actually, now that I'm going to turn this way. But it was something that we did as a kid.
Anyways,
so I just want to throw that in
Yeah.
there. That it was something we did. We would watch that movie, and what was it? 93, the first one. 92.
92,
Okay, so I
Kevin,
probably.
90s.
Oh yeah, 90s. Okay, so I saw it probably in 93 when it came out, and like on VHS. So I was probably 12 when it came out, and that was I remember going over to Adam Oxett's house with my friend Adam Smith, and that's why I say all my friends whose Adam or first names are Adam, their last name, because I had a lot of them. And we would have like light a candle and stare in front of the mirror, and we would say like Candyman 3 times, but not 5. But what was the other one? The mother, was it Bloody Mary? Yeah,
Bloody
so that
Mary.
was the other one. We did that one.
I
And we
I
figured ourselves out.
I remember Jay Lowenthal came to my house, for a party or whatever when we were in high school, and they talked him into going into the bathroom and saying it. I was like, nope, see ya, I'm out, peace. I'm not gonna be in there for that shit. He's still alive, by the way. So I mean, obviously,
Did you guys ever see the South Park episode where they did Biggie Smalls instead?
No.
It's
sure it is.
fantastic, dude. You say Biggie Smalls' name, and then he's gonna pop a cap in your ass. Like, it's hilarious, dude. It really is.
And a shout out to Candyman.
To get to why I didn't put him higher was because, like you said, he's just not as well known. But I mean, I think if you know him, like, I know Tony Todd's been in a shit ton of horror movies at this point, but I don't think of him as the janitor or the whatever he was, the Undertaker in the Final Destination. He is Candyman first and foremost when I think of him. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so is it number 13? Lucky? Lucky me.
Lucky number
Yeah,
13.
I finally get a break.
Okay,
Woo.
number 13, Pinhead, played by Doug Bradley in Clive Barker's Hellraiser, 1987. Uh, Played him in most of the movies. I didn't realize until I saw Revelations that Doug Bradley wasn't Pinhead in all of them. Obviously, not the 2022 reboot, whatever, or what have you. Sex, blood, and BDSM. Cult leader, literally from hell, to demonic creatures known as the Cenobites. Sometimes he kills his victims by means of tearing them apart with hook chains. Other times he just drags them into an eternity of suffering. Uh, Tall, bald, pasty white, uh, all in leather, with nails all over his head, rolling usually six deep. How many Cenobites do you think he's got with him at all times? At least five in the first one, and then they kind of
I mean,
the entourage gets lower and lower throughout the series. He's like the genie in a bottle, but it's uh, for kinky sex, torture, pain, death, and suffering. But instead of a bottle, it's a puzzle box. I love uh, the original Hellraiser movie more than a lot of the other first films of these horror icons, but the series definitely lacks. And Pinhead himself as an icon, he's up there. I would say. I would say that I don't know. We'll get into it a little bit later when we get into some of the major 1980s to early 90s. I would say before 94 of people who existed before that. You know, Pinhead would be like maybe not on the Mount Rushmore, but he would be, in I think the main six of those guys. Uh, and this, I don't think we've really gotten to those, so this might be the number six of the 80s horror Halloween mask uh, type horror icons. So I'll open it up. No pun intended.
I think what's interesting and what makes him iconic, especially because that's something you brought up, like he's not the only one, but he's not even named Pinhead until Hellraiser 2. In Hellraiser 1, he's just lead Cenobite. But everybody knows him as fucking Pinhead. Like, just his appearance was so iconic. Like you said, that he sticks up there with, some of the more famous 1980s horror icons that, like you alluded to, will be higher up the list. I mean, like, really, he's not even, like, the main antagonist in the movie, the first one. I mean, he's definitely, not a good guy, but if you're looking at active malice, it's definitely certain other characters within that movie, and yet Pinhead is the one that everybody remembers.
Yeah. I was not a huge fan of Hellraiser growing up. I'd only seen, I don't know, part three, I think may have been my first one. I watched them out of order. I'd seen some of the later ones before I finally went back, and I think it was 2 or 3 years ago I finally sat down and just watched the whole franchise. I want to say for better or worse, but by and large, it really was for worse. I think there was 4 good Hellraiser movies until the reboot, and I liked the reboot, so I'm going to say 5 out of the 11 or 12 of them. I don't even remember how many there are anymore. The issue with the franchise is that after part 4, they just started taking scripts and they're like, well, how do we insert Pinhead? Okay, Now we have a movie, and it was just terrible. That doesn't help his standing. I think if the franchise had they still had competent writers that were writing Hellraiser movies, I think Pinhead may have cracked top 10, but so much of the latter half of the Hellraiser movies are not good.
Here's a question to think about while you're talking about this, but I mean, looking at like Clive Barker dudes on this list, I mean, it appears that he just kind of gave up control of the characters, and after that happened,
that's no coincidence. That it really isn't. He's cool as shit, and the thing that separates Pinhead, I think, from so many, is that he has a niche audience. Like, he has a bigger audience, but he has a niche audience that like will rank him like number 1 or number 2, and they are hardcore into Pinhead, and that's pretty awesome. So, I don't know. I'm not surprised they didn't make the top 10. I think some people will actually probably be a little outraged that he didn't make the top 10, though, when listening to this. Do you guys think there's going to be some outrage on that one?
I don't know. I think it depends, because once we get to the top 10, I think it kind of like, for better or worse, explains itself of why he isn't. But yeah, he's definitely on my top 10, and I do think that yeah, it is unfortunate that's the series. And then when they did Revelations and then Judgment, which I have not seen Judgment, but
I don't remember them by name. I remember them by like there was the James Remar one, which was like part 5, I think, and then there was the guy from like, I don't know, like the insurance company commercial. He was in one, and then you had the Lance Henriksen one.
Hellseeker. Oh, yeah, that was the last one I watched.
Hell World.
Hell World, yeah. Hell World was the last one with Doug Bradley in it. Bradley, sorry.
Part 10 was complete and utter dog.
That's Judgment, right?
If I remember correctly. I think that's like the one that I actually own on Vudu. Like, I'm pretty sure I own the absolute worst one and only one Hellraiser in my Vudu collection. I'm so ashamed of it.
Didn't they basically become like almost direct-to-video? The last couple, like, barely direct-to-video? Like
2005 on?
After part 4. After part 4, they all... After part 4, there was not a script that was written to be a Hellraiser script. I deep dived into all of this. None of them, they were just the production company had bought the script, and they needed to make a Hellraiser movie to keep the rights, so they would shove Pinhead in the movie and kind of rewrite it just a little bit. That was part 5 through 10, was this half-ass bullshit. That's why the franchise just... It is what it is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad. But you know what? Part 4 isn't that good. I know some people will defend it, and I just don't like any horror
Bloodline?
movie that is part whatever in space.
Is that Bloodline?
Yeah, that's the one that has Adam. I can't think of
Adam
his name.
Scott.
His first role.
Yeah.
Adam Scott's first role is in a fucking Hellraiser movie. That's great. That really.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that one because but you got to go with it. And I think in a lot, it's not really, it's not a great movie.
After Hellraiser 3, it's not what you kind of expect.
No, it's not. It's hard.
I think, like, if you watch them in sequence.
Yeah, and I did, and I kind of liked that aspect of it because there's so many of them, but without seeing the end ones. But like ones being weird like that is kind of fun because it's not the same thing over and over again. Which I don't think it. I don't know. I don't know. I guess for better or worse, they kind of are the same thing. The first 3 movies, in some way.
A lot of people shit on part 3.
Yeah, part 3 is fun.
But isn't part 3 the one that had Motorhead's Hellraiser
Yeah, I think
on
so.
the soundtrack?
Yeah, that one's great, actually. So it's not as good as 2 and 1 or 2, but it's up there. Yeah, it's definitely great in its own way,
right? Like,
yeah,
it's like
in
guilty pleasure
the first one in the 90s.
I actually liked part 5 a lot, too. I mean, that was remember the first one I saw, but it actually
Is that
Craig
the
Schaefer?
Remar one?
yeah, the Remar, yeah, Inferno, yeah. Yeah, it to me, like, I was able to follow, coming in at, like, part 5 as the first one I saw, I was still able to follow the fucking movie, and it had a decent twist. I mean, it wasn't great, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I mean, you're right, like, it's another case of a series where the further you go, the shittier it gets.
As you watch them, you can actually see, like, oh, this wouldn't have been a bad movie, but you could clearly see where they just pigeonhole Pinhead. I think it's like part 9, like they're in Europe or some shit, or maybe it's part 7. I don't know. But one of them, it's like you guys pigeonholed Pinhead, and it doesn't even make sense. At least like these other ones, part 5, it made some sense. You could have seen like a decent movie being made there, though, without the inclusion of Pinhead. It just wouldn't have survived. It wouldn't have gotten any distribution without Pinhead, I don't think.
Yeah. You know what? One of the biggest regrets I have, because I just keep fucking forgetting that it's out there, is going in watching the reboot. I mean, I have Hulu, and I just...
Oh, you still haven't seen it?
Yeah, every time I go to sit down with Hulu, I'm like, oh, a new episode of Archer's out. Oh, I need to rewatch 40 episodes of Hannibal within 3 weeks before the fucking podcast is coming up. And, I'm like, oh, I forgot about the movie section.
Did you watch the the new one that's out on Hulu that your wife contacted me? She's like, "Have you seen this yet?" And I haven't. It was like documentary.
No, I haven't seen that. She watched it without me again.
Okay, yeah, I haven't either. I told her I was going to watch it last Saturday, and I guess I'm a great big liar.
She actually told me after she told you about that she was kind of upset that she told you, because she's like, it started out okay and then it just got progressively worse, and I felt guilty for suggesting it to Kent, but he hasn't said anything to me. So
What is it?
Monster in the House or something like that. I know it's not the right name, but if you go to Hulu and go under horror, it's like their first or second thing there.
Is the thing about frogging?
It's documentary.
Yeah, about like people living in houses
Monster
and stuff.
Inside?
I think I saw that on.
America's Most Extreme
yeah.
Haunted House?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's about people. There's a couple of them.
I think there's only just the one, right? It's just
It looks like
okay.
it's an hour and 27 minutes. Yeah, she was like, yeah, I started watching this, and as I went on, it just got worse, and I was like, oops, I shouldn't have suggested this.
fantastic. All right. Are we good with Pinhead?
I think we're good with Pinhead.
Yes.
All right. At number 12. This one I was a little surprised, but this seems about right. Pennywise, the dancing fucking clown. And you know what? I know in most of these other ones we have a clear-cut pick. And before I even go on this diatribe, quick question. Tim Curry or Bill Skarsgård? Chris, which one you going with?
It's not a quick question. They're both really good. I mean, Tim Curry loses out on the fact that his was made, 30 some odd years before the next one.
Dated as fuck,
Yeah.
but he's great in a dated as
He's
fuck.
great as it, but
Hey, I have a question. Is the question who is better or who is more iconic?
Who do you prefer?
Okay,
Simple
sorry.
preference.
Go ahead, Chris.
Chris, maybe.
Oh, sorry. But Bill Skarsgård hits it out of the park right away with just the amount of brutality that they let him show. I mean, that fucking first scene when you see the teeth grow out and he fucking bites the arm off. But I think if we're talking like Kevin just said, who's more iconic, I got to go with Tim Curry. I mean, yeah,
it's tough.
but that is probably a lot of our generational bias showing.
Because that movie was awesome when we were kids.
It was.
That movie was
It was
fucking
really.
great.
It probably was what mostly got me into Stephen King. It wasn't for a couple of years until I was older that I started really getting into him. But thinking back to how good the Stand miniseries was,
Yeah. So Kevin, who you got? Who's your preference at the very least?
Oh, I mean, so I think what Chris said, the generational bias. I think on icon wise, I think now modern people are going to recognize Bill Skarsgård. But who do I prefer? Tim Curry. I liked it part one when I saw it the first time. I thought it was pretty good, and then I saw it again, and I haven't finished part two, even though I know that it's different, but I couldn't get over the CGI stuff. It just rubbed me the wrong way. I wasn't scared or creeped out. I know that I'm older, and when I was, you know, younger with Tim Curry, it's a different situation. But I just felt like it was just Stranger Things, and when I saw it the first time, I never saw Stranger Things, and then I've seen a few seasons of Stranger Things. It's a good show, but it was just
They
too
made
much.
bank on that.
They did make
They
me.
really did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I don't like very profitable things. I like
Go on.
give me the disaster. Give me, but I mean, like the It miniseries was for the longest time. I forgot Pennywise, which is crazy. I do agree that he is probably the most iconic Stephen King character, and that is because of the remake with Bill Skarsgård, and he is great in it, and he is creepy, but man, I don't know. Maybe the next time I watch it, part one, it would be great. But yeah, Tim Curry, I just want to say, I watched the first part. Came on at like the miniseries at like 9 o'clock or something. I don't know, but it was my bedtime. I had a little black and white TV. I turned it on, and I watched the opening section of it, and I was so absolutely scared I couldn't watch the rest of it until the next day when my dad showed me during the daytime after I got out of school the first part of it, the Tim Curry one with the miniseries.
So here's what I just learned. I learned a lesson here. That if I come in and I'm not 100% sure on what to exactly elaborate on, just start off with a question for you two, and you guys just filled up like my whole time slot, and that was wonderful because at the end of the day, like they're both great for their own audience of the time. I think that we all basically said that in our own way. I think I maybe even told this story before on this podcast, but when I went to see It Chapter 1 in the theater in Johnstown, there was a picture of Pennywise next to where it said It Chapter 1, and it was of Tim Curry. And I cracked up. I'm like, so whoever did this was either a bitter horror fan or never had seen it before and just printed up the very first picture that they found of Pennywise. Either way, it's funny as hell to me.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. There's a lot to say. Chris and I will probably eternally disagree on the merits of It Chapter 2, for better or worse. But It Chapter 1 still hits me in a really good way, and the original It still hits me in a good way, and portions of It Chapter 2 still hits me.
I mean, that's completely fair. Completely fair. I mean, I don't think It Chapter 2 is a great movie, but I think it's just better than, than
people like me.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not a shit burger. It's just, maybe like low-quality beef. It's not lean. There's a lot of fat in it, but it's not, it's not a turd.
Fair enough. I wore today with this podcast in mind. I specifically wore my Pennywise T-shirt, and I am wearing some red underwear and some dark green sweatpants because I was all about this podcast today, and I felt like everybody needed to know this bit of information. You're all welcome for that. I don't have a whole hell of a lot to really add to Pennywise. Like, I think because we had the reboot and it was so popular that, like, this covers probably, like, 40, 50 years of, like, people at this point. Like, because I think people that didn't get to see It Chapter 1 in the theater, they're still going to hear enough hype that they're going to seek it out. Like, we went and looked for Texas Chainsaw Massacre when we were of age. I think that's going to be something that happens with this newer era of Pennywise. That's just the guess.
They fucking parodied it on Saturday Night Live with the Kellyanne Conway sketch.
I haven't watched SNL in forever, so
dude,
I'm oblivious
they
here.
had Kate McKinnon pretending to be Kellyanne Conway down in the sewers, and she bit off Anderson Cooper's arm. It was pretty fucking funny.
Right.
It was after Chapter 1 came out, but before Chapter 2 did. So, but I want shit. It was like Kate McKinnon and Kyle Mooney, so I mean, it was, you know, the cast right before the current cast.
Gotcha. All right. Anything else to really say? Like, I feel like we kind of spouted off about Pennywise. Like, there's not a whole lot to say. It's just a great character.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh. All right. For number 11, I'm going to lean on Chris here a little bit because it's funny. For Pinhead, Chris and I were one space off on Pinhead, and for number 11, we're talking about Reagan, specifically Reagan possessed by Pazuzu, and Chris and I had this almost identical rank off by 1 point. And I watched Exorcist, I don't know, 3 months ago maybe, when we were talking about overrated, underrated, so however long ago that was. Movie still holds up. My question when I was doing this is, you know, had this been 20 years ago, this is probably like easily top 5, I think. But I don't know how many of younger generation knows this movie. They know of The Exorcist. They may even know that there's a child spinning their head and puking up pea soup. I'm not quite sure if they know the fun quotes like "Your mother sucks cocks in hell," or, you know, stick your cock up her ass, you motherfucking worthless cocksucker. You know, so there's a lot of stuff. I'm just not sure. I think it doesn't crack top 10 because, you know, Exorcist 2, I don't know anybody that's seen Exorcist 2. I know a lot of people that's seen Exorcist 3 and really like it, but I feel like within our generation, most people haven't seen Exorcist 2 because we've all heard how shitty it was.
Well, I like to go along parroting with what you're saying. You know, there are a ton of people who would say that Exorcist, you know, I'm probably one of them, would say that Exorcist is probably the scariest movie ever made. And I guarantee that there are a ton of people who at least know what Reagan looks like when she's possessed, especially because of that internet meme that, well, not even really meme, but this scare thing that went around, you know, relatively close to the dawn of the internet, where they were like, "Oh, move your mouse through the maze, and if you hit one of the walls, the fucking her face would pop up with the scream." But
yeah,
like you said, like how many people know that the character's name is Reagan, or that she's possessed by Pazuzu? You know, so they're like, I guarantee you show like eight out of 10 people would be like, "Oh yeah, that's The Exorcist," but you know, maybe closer to 4 out of 10 who could identify who the character is, who played her, you know, what she was possessed by. So, yeah,
I think that with this new Exorcist movie, if there are people that liked it, and I'm not sure if
that's a big if.
And if they were remotely interested in the quote-unquote surprise cameos that came out, even though she's listed as the first person on IMDb, why the fuck are you doing this to us, IMDb, ruining it? You know, maybe you sit there and you go, if you're, you know, 23 years old, maybe you go, who the fuck is Linda Blair? And you know, like, you see her in the movie for 20 seconds and go, why is she the number one listed person in this movie? And maybe you go look her up if you really like the movie. I still think that's a huge if, though. But I'll be talking about that, you know, in the next one that we go over. I don't know. I really feel that this is close to, it's number 11. It just can't crack top 10 in today's audience, despite, as you say, probably being the scariest movie for so long. And I don't know, it's still, it's there with, if you say best horror / thriller movies, it's right there. It's Exorcist, it's Shining, it's Psycho. Like those three are always going to be in the conversation for the next 50 years as far as like well-made films go. So, with that, Kevin, what do you have to say? Because you did not have. Wow, Kevin, you dropped the ball here. You did not have her at all.
No, I didn't. I like forgot about her. Well, all right. So
Okay. Fucking
for
fail.
me, fuck me, Jesus. All right, that's all I have to say. Fuck me, Jesus. I shouldn't have said it twice. Sorry, guys. But if you've seen The Exorcist, it's much more vulgar than that, and that's why my dad never let me watch this movie. And I didn't catch it until in my 20s. But yes, everything you say is right. I didn't know that it was Reagan, but I did know that it was The Exorcist, and that there was this girl with a spinning head, and But I kind of outside of that, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have memes, so I didn't really have the access to The Exorcist. Some of my friends saw it, um, and I only saw the cut you've never seen before. So I've never actually seen the theatrical cut of The Exorcist.
I think there's 3 cuts now.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, because I was like looking it up, and I would be interested to see all 3. I think I own it. I'm a big William Friedkin fan, so when I looked him up, when I got the French Connection, I was like, oh, this dude also did The Exorcist. Like, and I have seen it at that point, but I was, and I saw the French Connection when I was a kid too. But when I knew who William Friedkin was, which was in the last 10 years, I was like, oh shit, this guy like made both movies. So yeah, so I saw it in my 20s, and I could tell, like, man, it was super vulgar. I love it, and it is great. But I don't know. But the meme thing, I think memes is a big thing. People know The Exorcist. People were stoked on it. I think whether they saw the original Exorcist or not, because it's another scary movie franchise. I don't know, but I guess I don't know what the ticket sales are for Exorcist Believer at the moment, but it's enough to make it more relevant in the conversation. The Exorcist is a great movie. I have seen Heretic, but that was I did see it when I was a kid. I think that my dad did let me watch that one, but um, and then Close My Eyes when Linda Blair's boobs are on the screen. But uh, yeah, I don't think my dad was ready to have the conversation of the uh, her shoving the cross inside herself and like what that was about.
My mom wouldn't let me watch it either. It was one of those few movies that she didn't rent for me. I had to wait till I was an adult to see it.
Yeah. So yeah, I worked at the video store, so I was like 19, 20. Yeah. So I dropped the ball on it. But yeah, she is on all of the posters and is in the horror community. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly, yeah, don't know what the 20-year-olds are saying.
Probably not much after
Believer.
seeing the new one, but I will say this: it was great. There was like 8 freaking kids in like the front, like 3 rows. And I was like, those parents are doing everything right. So maybe it'll hit a new audience. Never know.
Wait, how old were the
I
kids?
would say they were probably like 8 to 12. Like they were much too young to
Did
be
they
there.
see
I
the
thought.
original? Like, we just got done saying our parents would never show us
Well,
The
yeah,
Exorcist.
exactly. So like I said,
Is it is it vulgar?
no, there's
No.
one scene where they kind of have to check one of the girls to see if she was raped or whatever, but some of the wording wasn't great, but like as a kid I don't think you would get half of the shit. Probably parents are sitting there like cringing though as that scene is happening, is my guess.
Well, they should be cringing more. That's a relief to what that could have been.
Yes.
like what it sounds like it should have been. But yeah, I haven't seen it. I did see the preview to it in the theater, and Ellen Burstyn's in it. The trailer looked great. The theatrical trailer looked
Agreed.
really good.
That's why I spent money
And-
like an idiot.
And yeah, and I would say in your case, it is an idiot because you did not like David Gordon Green's trilogy. Like, why would you go see this?
Mistakes were
but
made, Kevin,
anyways.
okay?
That says it all.
Well, you're a true you're a true fan though of the genre. You know, you're like bad is part of the territory, right?
It is.
But I do want to just end on this one thing about it, not Reagan though, but The Exorcist and specifically the new movie. But I've been watching Big Brother, and this season in promotion to the movie, they did a whole Exorcist believer thing. I don't know if you guys know the show Big Brother. I'm not going to get into it too much, but there are all these people stuck in a house, on like a studio, so they're cut off from the world. And one of the prizes was to watch the movie when it came out. And it's also live. It's a live reality show. Like people get voted off the show in real time, like while you're watching it. So the week that came, they had like a little challenge where you collected these things in these rooms, and then you had to go and there's these two girls, like, you know, doing an exorcism of it. And so it was a great promotion. And then they watched the movie and they showed clips of it on the show. So it's just, I think,
This
like
was
a
on Big
whole
Brother?
other audience. Yeah, Big Brother.
Isn't that
yeah.
a CBS show?
Yeah.
You would think
Yeah,
NBC
Paramount.
because they forked over $400 million for this.
Universal. You think Universal would definitely have it?
Yeah.
But
Wow.
but it's just because a big promotional thing. They, you know,
So
they
much
did
money
it. So
wasted.
and yeah, so Universal was probably giving Paramount money to, like, you know, do this, and they're like, yeah, we'll do a whole challenge and, you know, like whatever, because they have the scary universe. And it and that was cool too. And they actually showed the end of the movie where it's like directed by David Gordon Green, and one of the girls actually gave a shout out to it, and I was really impressed that they gave him credit, not just because of David Gordon Green specifically, but just the director in general, you know, because I don't know. Besides people who know the Halloween thing,
that
I
girl
don't know.
has no taste in movies whatsoever. Yep.
Maybe, but outside of that, it's respect on the director, and it was cool that they give the director a shout out, because I do feel like they, you know,
Yeah.
point exactly. William Friedkin, I didn't know that, you know, the same guy who did The French Connection and Blue Chips, the Nick Nolte, Shaquille O'Neal
Shaquille
movie.
O'Neal and Anthony Hardaway, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it was the same genius. So, all right, that's all I got.
Let's wrap this up. We have hit like 2.5 hours, and we still got a top 10 and honorable mention and what the fuck we've seen.
All right, guys, we will be back with our top 10 honorable mentions and what the fuck we've seen.
Oh, and you guys are going to learn what it tastes like. Well, my reaction is to dipping a caramel Twix into a bowl of caramel. So that's what you got to look
Did
forward
you
to.
give yourself
Yeah.
a fucking cavity right away?
I've been munching on Halloween candy this whole podcast, like diabizzles, man. But anyway, see you in the next one.
David Gordon Green.